destroy the culture that we have, destroy our identity. This is very, very bad.
And we suspect that there are no proper plans for the development, and this is just going to be a way of making money after degazettement, of then selling on the land to third parties for possible projects.
So just quickly to go through an introduction. Firstly, Mr. Faizal Parish. Sorry if I got your name pronounced wrong. He's a wetland ecologist and the director of Malaysian-based Global Environment Center, GEC, which supports the conservation of peatlands, forests, and rivers in Malaysia and throughout Southeast Asia. And Shaq Koyok is a contemporary artist activist from the Temuan community of Kampung Pulau Kempas, whose artwork captures a contemporary view of the struggle faced by Malaysia's indigenous people. We are very pleased and happy that both of them could join us for the webinar tonight. Without much further ado, I'd like to give the time to Mr. Faizal to have a short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me share the screen. So I hope everyone can see that. So the Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve is a critical site in Selangor. I'm having problems to change the slides. Okay. So it's a forest reserve in Selangor. It's just to the west of Cyberjaya. So you can see in this picture the forest reserve. It's a long, narrow strip. And on the east side is the elite highway to KLIA. And behind that, you can see the buildings of Cyberjaya. And just in the foreground in the picture, you can see one of the Orang Asli Kampong, Pusat Baru. And Pulau Kempas and Bukit Chiding are to the right. That's where Shaq Koyok is from. So you can see the significant high forest in the center of the site. So this area is very significant from a biodiversity point of view. There are a number of very rare species. Top right, you can see the Selangor pygmy flying squirrel, very rare species, only found in Selangor, and this is one of the sites where it occurs. And the bottom right, you can see the Langat red betta fighting fish. This is extremely rare, and this variety is only known from two sites, Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve, which is this one, and the one which was mentioned by Evelyn, which is Burning. That luckily is not this site, it's Kuala Langat South Forest Reserve, about 15 kilometers to the south near to KLIA. So luckily in this site, we haven't had any fires, although we are worried that people may try to start fires as part of the gazettement process. There are a broad range of other species. So we have a combination of peat swamp forest and lowland dipterocarp forest, so a very high diversity of plant and animal species in the site. We have at least 3 critically endangered or endangered tree species, Meranti bunga, Meranti bakau, and Masawa paya in the site, but further examination may reveal more species. Orang Asli have been living here and depending on the forest for at least, we believe, 150 years, but could be much longer. This is a photograph from 1886, 134 years ago, from Pulau Kempas. That's the Shaq Koyok's village. So that has been there at least 134 years. And we believe, according to the locals, it must have been there much longer. and they really are the owners and guardians of this site for hundreds of years. So that was recognized in the stage when this forest was gazetted as a forest reserve. It was gazetted in 1927, so coming to 100 years ago, so that during the colonial administration. Within the reserve gazettement document, which is that on the right, when it was gazetted, originally it was 17,900 acres, or about 8,000 hectares. Unfortunately, 90% of it has been degazetted and developed in the last 30 years, and only remaining just over 950 hectares. It's surrounded by 5 Orang Asli village with more than 1,000 residents, and many of them, like Shaq Koyok's village, have been there a long time and long-term dependence on the area. The Forest Reserve Gazettement is quite unusual compared to others in that it very specifically gives rights to the Orang Asli from Bukit Pra, Pulau Kempas, and Bukit Kamandol, so 3 Orang Asli villages within the forest, of which Pulau Kempas is the one adjacent to the remaining forest. So the degazettement of the Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve would disregard the rights of the Orang Asli, who have lived there, as I said, for more than 150 years. The forest is a major socioeconomic source for Orang Asli. It's water source, and the forest is also of great cultural significance for the community. So here we can see the forest reserve, this reverse L shape, running parallel to the elite highway, and then this L across the bottom. It's that shape because various blocks have been degazetted over the years, leaving it like that. And you can see arrowed are the adjacent Orang Asli villages. In 5th of February, this was when the shock came, and there was this notice you can see on the left, published in 2 papers, proposing to degazette 930 hectares, or 97% of the site. The little remaining strip you can see in pale green along the bottom, that is not to be conserved. That's also scheduled to hand out for the development of the East Coast Railway line. So basically 100% of the forest reserve is proposed for conversion by the state government. So in the justification given by the Menteri Besar, this was in a press conference on 20th of February, he said the reason they're degazetting it is that it's always burning. And he said that it's always burning, and then it caused problem to people, and the smoke blows across the highway. And then he shared the image on the left in February this year, and to show that it was always burning. But what we found was that they're using the satellite image from 6 years ago, from 2014. That's the one you can see on the right, and not the current satellite image. So they're just saying 6 years ago it burned, so now we want to convert it. It's like saying your house was demolished 6 years ago, you rebuilt it, but now we're declaring that there's no house there anymore. So it's totally not following the current situation. In our view, it's just making an excuse to develop the area. So you can see on the right of this image, the same area in 2020, and 90% of the forest, which was degraded in 2014, has recovered significantly, and now maybe 8-meter tall forest on much of the area that the state has said is burnt and degraded. So it's just wrong information. The state government said 40% of the area has been degraded through fire and encroachment, but there is no significant encroachment within the forest reserve. You can see the majority of the forest reserve in the image on the right. And as I said, the areas impacted by fire have recovered very well. So what is the impact of the proposed degazettement of the area? and the area is proposed to be degazetted and handed out for what is termed mixed development, and 35% of the site is proposed for development by MBI, Menteri Besar Incorporated, and the rest of the site is proposed to be given to a relative of the Sultan, again for mixed development. But no proposals of exactly what the mixed development is have been provided. And we suspect that there are no proper plans for the development, and this is just going to be a way of making money after degazettement, of then selling on the land to third parties for possible projects. Because the investment for such a large area would have to be maybe 100 or 150 billion if you want to develop such a large area for mixed development. So we think that the state government is not going to invest that money, and maybe they're thinking of selling it on to other parties. So the impacts, if it goes ahead, include the major negative impact on the culture, welfare, and rights of the Orang Asli community, the loss of wildlife habitat and potential extinction of endangered species, particularly the red betta fish species, which is only recently described and restricted to this site, the increased risk of fire in the area and the surrounding peatland area because of the opening up, soil subsidence and flood risk in the area, and the release of the stored carbon within the forest and the peat. About 60% of the site is peat, and the rest is mineral soil. So we estimate about 5.5 million tons of carbon dioxide could be released on the development, as well as the loss of research, education, recreation, ecotourism sites, and impact on the local socio-economy. The area has great potential to be developed as a gateway to Malaysia, being it's very near the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, and there could be many options for ecotourism and education for visitors coming through KLIA Gateway. So what is the status of the area under the previous government plans? It was gazetted in 1927 as a permanent forest reserve. It's designated as environmentally sensitive area class 1 in the National Physical Plan, and under that, no development of any sort is permitted. It's designated as environmentally sensitive area in the Selangor Structure Plan to 2035. Again, no development is allowed up till 2035. And then the Kuala Langat District Local Plan, which was only gazetted in middle of 2018. Again, it's designated as a strict conservation area with no development allowed. So the proposed development is totally 100% against the gazetted development plans for the area. Just a little bit of information on the action over the last few years. As mentioned earlier, prior to 2014, the area, some portions of the area were fire prone, primarily linked to various development projects, highway and land development housing projects along the boundary that led to regular fires taking place in the area. But the previous Menteri Besar in 2015 specifically requested Global Environment Center and the Forestry Department and the local Orang Asli community to work together to try to prevent the fires and to restore the area. So after the last 5 years, the Orang Asli community has worked. They have created a group called Friends of Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve, and they have been very active in fire prevention through monitoring and patrolling, blocking of drains, raising water level, and also fire suppression. They've also developed a lot of handicraft and livelihood activities related to the retaining of the forest. These are some of the products produced. And in addition, they have established their own community nursery, which is maintained by the members of the community group. And this has produced thousands of seedlings. Maybe 15,000 seedlings have been produced in this nursery, which more than 10,000 have been planted back into the forest area. So 10,000 trees have been planted in the most degraded portions which had burnt regularly, and other portions, the drainage canals were blocked up, and that facilitated the regrowth of forest. And now about 90% of the degraded forest has recovered, and there has only been one fire since 2015. So this has been extremely successful program led by the local community and recognized by the state government. And then the state government is coming, albeit a new Menteri Besar, and he is claiming that the whole area is burning all the time, and as a result, they need to convert it into a shopping lot to prevent the fires. So here we can see an aerial view. The main block of the forest reserve is on the right-hand side. There are some facilities, a watchtower and water retention pond put in by the federal government support. And all of this area that we can see there is where the Orang Asli and have been mainly doing the replanting. And then these are some of the area you can see the very good growth of trees. These trees up now to 8 meters. And these are the recovered forest in areas which were burnt, but where the water table has been restored and the forest has recovered well. So just a little bit about the process. So the 5th of February 2020 was the initial notification in the newsletter, in the newspaper. They only published one advert in 2 newspapers on one day, maybe hoping that no one would be paying attention just after Chinese New Year. And this specifically called for any objections to be sent within 30 days to the Forestry Department. Between 5th of February and 5th of March, 45,000 written objections were submitted to the Forestry Department, and approximately 100,000 people have signed various petitions. The local Orang Asli, as well as the coalition to protect the Selangor Forest, which is a coalition of 7 NGOs who is working to support the Orang Asli community against the gazettement. We also requested for an extension of the objection period, so we had more time to communicate with the broader range of stakeholders, particularly at the local level. This request for extension, which is allowed for under the law and normally is automatic once it's requested, was denied by the state government. On the 17th of March, just after the close of the objection period, there was a statement by the Menteri Besar in the State Assembly. He recognized that they had received many objections, but he justified it again, claiming that the reason was frequent fires. And then he said that the state government would be getting some income as a result of the mixed development. But the figure he announced in the State Assembly works out as only 3 ringgit per square foot for the developed area. This compares to the cost of land, maybe 200 meters away in Cyberjaya, of 150 ringgit per square foot. So it seems they are only asking for about 2% of the real price of the land from the developers. Lastly, the next day after the State Assembly was the MCO, which has been on until now and will continue at least till 12th of May, if not beyond. We have sent many letters and communications to the state government during this period, but have received no responses at all. These are a couple of the posters that we have on the coalition Facebook page and on coalition members' website that can be used for promotion about the issues and concerns of the area. And we can provide these and other materials to any of those who are joining the meeting today or want to follow up on the issue. Finally, how can people support this process? You can contribute directly to the campaign to save the forest reserve, either with time or resources. You can contribute to efforts to support the welfare and the rights of the Orang Asli community. You can support further work to document the values of the site, which we will need when the state moves probably to the next stage of public inquiry. You can send letters of concern to state and federal governments, and you can participate in the planned public inquiry. Normally, according to the enactment, the public inquiry should be held within 1 month after the closure of the date for objections, and that should have been on 5th of April this year. Of course, because of the MCO, this was not held, but we worry that the state will rush to hold it immediately after the MCO is lifted, and that people will not again have time to attend, or the state will try to claim that they will restrict participation because of the social distancing requirement after the MCO, and then proceed with limited public engagement. And also, we hope that you can spread the word to others. So there are a few contact details that you can see. I think this presentation will be available online, so you can get the details later for Global Environment Center, for Treat Every Environment Special Trees. Lila Panica has been the facilitator for the coalition. Sam, which is based in Penang, as you know, have been a major supporter of the program, particularly on the legal aspects and the rights. And then you can also look at the Facebook for the coalition, and you can sign up on the petition on change.org. There's more than 30,000 people who've signed up so far, so you can join them, and we will provide copies of the updated list for the petition to the state government by the time of the public inquiry. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. Evelyn, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah, I just unmute myself. So I was just saying, thank you so much for the comprehensive presentation. We've seen quite a lot covered from the very beginning when the forest is gazetted until today, and all the support that has been pouring in through petition and the efforts that the coalitions have put together to campaign against the degazettement is quite far already. But then again, you know, the struggle still exists until now, and with the MCO in place, the challenges is still there. But without further ado, maybe I'll just give the time now to Shaq. Shaq, are you ready to give a sharing?
Yes, I'm ready.
Great, anytime you're ready.
All right. Hello, my name is Shaq Koyok. I am from Kampung Pulau Kempas, Rethink. It's my family from generation, our ancestors actually come from the where the forests are now. Locally, we know that place as Pulau Muyang. Pulau Muyang literally means ancestor, island for ancestor. That's and then our original village was there until we moved to Pulau Kempas now, and this is where so many of our ancestors have been buried in that area, and actually, and I think during 2006, the half of the forest been deforested by a logging company in 2006, and I remember that time when the logging company come in out until they log and get anything, and then we quite shocked when that happened, and we realized things will got worse when this issue come up in 5th February, when we heard that government of Selangor tried to degazette the area from a forest reserve to, I don't know what the development they want to do. We quite shocked that the incident. We afraid that incident gonna happen again, because it's not easy for us to maintain our culture, to live in harmony place and also peaceful place, because even now we got a lorry coming down using our village road to bring the soil to develop the Gamuda Cove. Gamuda Cove, where if you look at the map, half of the forest will develop into Gamuda Cove. It's a theme park, and while they're doing this theme park, they're actually using the road from my village, and make it so unsafe for the community to use our own village, our own road, even to the houses that built next to the road got really what is it called? Feel the impact of the pollution, like dust pollution, like air pollution, like noise pollution. Actually make it so unsafe for the community to go to the shop or to go out. And even I heard there's some accident happening because just want to get away from the lorry, and that's the incident that we read. We're gonna get worse if it's if this degradation happen, and also we're gonna lose our identity. That's the most important thing. And because now we're living in a digital world, and I hope everybody will spread the word. And personally, I'm an artist. My works always relate to my root, to my background, and to my culture. As you can see, the one I did now is this is actually a pandanus woven mat. The pandanus woven mat actually come from the jungle, and my mom, my sister-in-law, my whole villagers produced this mat for me to paint on it. And so that's another way for me to send a message about the importance of this forest for around Asli, because without forest there's no around Asli, and without around Asli there's no forest, I think, because we are a guardian for rainforest for this country, and we do best we can to protect it from being destroyed, being wiped out from the face of the earth. And I hope, you know, a young generation also do the campaign together, and also educate others about the importance of rainforest for Asli, also the importance of rainforest for the whole world, because we need rainforest for our future. We have enough of concrete building, and we have enough of development in this country. If you look at the development company, development area, the build accommodation, there's so many empty properties out there, still unoccupied, still vacant. And I don't know why they want to destroy this beautiful jungle, this rich is very unique. It's a peat forest, it's a tanah gambut. Peat forest is very unique biodiversity that we have in Malaysia, and I'm sure there's not many peat forests left in Malaysia. On top of that, in peat forest, we have totally different kind of species, flora and fauna. That's really important for to learn. Of course, I think all our medicine that we've been used in modern day now, using that the research that has been done is always come from the forest, and even my parents, my villagers use this forest for their pharmacy, for their medicine, because that's what we been survived. Been when we early days in the 80s, I think in early days, like 100 years ago, we never gone up to the hospital to cure ourselves, but we go to the jungle for the medicine, and especially traditional medicine. The plant for the herbal plant that we collected from the for this forest, especially, and that was helping us today. And I'm sure this knowledge is very valuable for any medical out there. And in this time of day when COVID-19, I'm sure they probably the missing link. We always doesn't look to it, and I'm sure this missing link will be found in the forest, and that, because whatever happened, I think we need to look back to the forest. We need to go back to the nature, because the oxygen we have now is come from the nature itself. Oxygen doesn't come up from the concrete building or a modern, apartment or anything else, because we need rainforest. We need forest, and for me as honestly as artist, it's very I got really strong relationship with the forest, because I grew up playing around inside the forest. I go hunting, I go collecting vegetables, even fishing there, even staying up in the jungle and camping with my friends, swimming and everything. And it's a sad to hear that a government want to destroy my memory, destroy my background, almost like destroy the culture that we have, destroy our identity. It's very bad, and I hope government will reconsider that. And this is very not just for Asli. I think this forest is a very good platform for any tourism industry to building up to, because peat forest is very rare and quite unique, and during a rainy day, the peat forest will be covered with water, and even some species of plant and animal that have to adapt to the new environment. And I'm sure there's so many fauna you find it really different than normal you can find in a normal jungle. And I'm sure the tourism will be tourists will be happy to go to these places to learn more about our rich biodiversity we have in our country. And to have that and I think we quite lucky, because in my life I've been to many places around the world, and they cherish that the biodiversity we have. They're very envious, they're very jealous that we have this rainforest that full of biodiversity that they never seen it. They wish to have in their country. And then from that itself, I feel like I'm proud that we have our jungle. We still have our jungle, and I probably told them that I am from the I'm from the generation that I live near side by the forest. I even have experience of both hunting, finding food from the forest, to learn the knowledge from my fathers, from my mothers, even from the whole village, because we believe we are guardian of a rainforest, and without a rainforest, we will not exist, I think. And without right or indigenous people, there's no rainforest. Thank you. I think that's all.
Thank you, Shaq, for the sharing. Really appreciate that came from your heart and your lived experience as someone who grew up with the forest, which I think a lot of us in the forum today does not have the privilege of such an experience. So thank you so much for putting it out there and making us understand that the forest is not just a forest, it's also a place of identity, it's a home, it's your ancestral land, it's a lot of memory and history tied together. And there's a lot of indigenous knowledge that we have not yet even explored in the world where it's so rapidly modernizing, and especially when we're in the season of isolation, a lot of us find ourselves in a place where we are rethinking what happens next. Do we want to go back to the old times that we used to know, which had perhaps brought us to what we have today, or can we restart better? Can we get rid of the things that did not serve us and put back the things that is actually beneficial? So I think tonight's discussion is basically around that, to really look into what is the meaning of development, what is modernization. So I really thank both of the panels, very enlightening presentation tonight. And I think we are really ahead of time, which is a good thing because we have more time to have a more interactive session. But I would like to begin by just probably asking Mr. Faizal. And I think a lot of people have just joined us after Mr. Faizal's presentation is over. But no worries, the presentation will be up on our website or our Facebook page. We will share it with all of you. There's a lot of information in there, and you'll catch up to speed about what has already been happening and the coalitions that have put their resources and people together, working hand in hand against this campaign. Perhaps my first question to Mr. Faizal would be, you've been in the thick of things for many years now, even from probably I would go to the extent of saying when the loggers came and start encroaching into the forest reserve, even then and then now, whatever that's left, the 900 hectare or acres forest is now going to be taken away. Even that, the last of the remaining of its kind, is going to be taken away. And given all these very compelling reasons why it shouldn't be, what do you think is actually the big barrier that is in the way of turning around this idea of degazetting it? Because if you look at your presentation, if I may just quickly share, because I have it with me. Okay. So, yes. So for those who had joined us later, you could see that there are so many negative impacts from degazetting the Kuala Langat North Forest Reserve, from cultural welfare of the Orang Asli community to the loss of wildlife habitat, increase of fire, soil subsidence, and 5.5 million tons of carbon dioxide, which contributes to local and global climate change, and loss of research, education, recreation, ecotourism sites, and local social economy. So I'll just ask Mr. Faizal, what do you think are the biggest barrier against, the logic is out there, but why is it that it just cannot make the plan of degazetment to be put to rest? Over to you. Mr. Faizal, you're muted.
Yeah, it's a bit perplexing why the state government would be going in this direction, because in fact it's totally against the election manifesto of the state government when they were elected 2 years ago, which was to stop large-scale projects which were leading to environmental degradation. And then one of the first things that they're doing is destroying one of the key and oldest forest reserves that we have in the state. So what is the reason for doing it? I mean, it seemed to be a throwback to the Malaysia of old days, when the forest land or the land under the state was the piggy bank of politicians to play around and make money. But this totally is against the manifesto and the stand and the policy of the state government. As I showed in one of the slides, the local plan for the area, which was only gazetted by the state government, the same state government, a year ago, just over a year ago, is totally against the development, and it said this area must be protected in perpetuity. So this is very strange, why suddenly someone would have the idea that this area should be opened up. So it's a bit perplexing, and we really think that if the rule of law is followed, or the electorate call the government to follow the promises that they made during the last election, this type of thing should not be happening. We also understand, I mean, that it's not only the state government behind the development, it's also other parties. As I mentioned in the presentation, there are relatives of the Sultan involved in the development, but the Sultan is the first one in the state who has been promoting conservation and protection of the forest. You can see many of the speeches by the Sultan asking the state government to better protect the forest and to restore the forest lands. So we hope that if the public and other stakeholders really bring forth the key issue, and that the importance of the area can be brought forward, then it will be possible to change the development pathway. I think that what we have heard, the state government, some have been claiming, or they were misinformed, that maybe this idea came from third party who claimed to the state government the area was always burning, the forest was degraded, it was of no value, and rather than checking it, they decided to follow that approach. So I think now, through the campaign and information, we have made clear that the information the state government has and is basing its decision on is a mistake. This is not the first time that Selangor State has proposed to de-gazette forest reserve. There was 10 years ago a proposal to de-gazette the sister forest reserve, Kuala Langat South Forest Reserve, and that is a larger area, about 5,000 hectares. That was proposed to be de-gazetted to turn into oil palm plantation in about 2009. That also led to a very strong campaign against that, and studies. Again, exactly the same playbook was followed. The area is burning all the time, and the area, the only way to stop the fire is to de-gazette it and develop it. But the campaign and the information given led to the state government dropping the proposal to develop that area. But what the state government have not done is put in the measures in that forest reserve to prevent the fires. And that is the one, Evelyn, you mentioned, where the fire is burning twice in the last month, twice during the MCO period. The fires have been burning there. And we worry that this is another effort by a third party. If they can burn down that forest reserve, then again, they can propose that one to be de-gazetted. But that is not the right thing to follow. So we really hope that by putting out the proper information, but it's very important that the people of Malaysia and the voters, both in Selangor and elsewhere, are bringing this issue forcefully to the state government and to the federal government. So we have a new federal government. Even though the previous federal government was strongly against this, at least 3 ministers, federal ministers, spoke out before the change of government that they're totally against this proposed de-gazettement. But we hope that the new federal government will still maintain that position, and they will continue to pressure Selangor to stop this proposal for the development. So I think we have the answers, but I think politically things will not change until there is enough pressure from people on these issues. Now, unfortunately, because of MCO, then we're not able to have any meetings or consultation or other things. But we hope as soon as MCO is lifted, there will be opportunity for stakeholders to meet and to convey their views. But still during MCO, everyone maybe have even more time to write letters and to send emails and to put things into social media to keep the attention on this. Because we worry if the attention dies, then the state government will just quietly carry on with the degazettement process.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Faizal. Really, it's really struggle of the old days from, you know, when we talk about environmental conservation, it's always about political will, it's always about public pressure, and we're not getting enough of that. And it had come to my attention that it was once where the state government was not accepting any objections from people who do not live there. So because of the issue of local standi. And would you like to explain a little bit on that?
Yeah, this arises from the wording in an annex to the enactment. So after the last problem with the attempted degazettement of Kuala Langat South, the then EXCO member for Environment, Elizabeth Wong, spearheaded a new state enactment which made this mandatory public inquiry process for any proposed degazettement. In the main part of that enactment, it says very clearly, any concerned person, who has an interest, may lodge an objection with the Forestry Department. That's in the main part of the enactment. But there is an annex to the enactment which gives a sample format for the state to put a notice in the paper, and it says this is the proposed degazettement, and this in this district, and the people of the district are invited to submit their objections. So the state have taken that wording in the annex as a sample and said that that is the law, that only people from the district can object. That means Shaq Koyok, living there, his family is there, can object. But they're saying that no one living 2 kilometers away in Cyberjaya, or 5 kilometers away in Putrajaya, or 10 kilometers away in Klang can object because they're not in the right district. So this, to me, is ludicrous when the loss of this area is going to affect not only the district, but the state as well as the nation. So it is our view that irrespective of what the state is saying, every citizen in Malaysia, or even internationally, has the right to bring their objection or voice their concern. And if the state government choose to ignore the concern, then I guess later they will find out from the election whether everyone supports their approach to ignore the views of the people. So, and we think that legally there is a strong case from our legal advisors, from SAM, have said that there is clearly a case for those beyond that under other laws. And for example, under the planning law in Malaysia, so this area is a conservation area under the Town and Country Planning Act, under the local plan, and there any stakeholder anywhere can lodge an objection or comment on change to the local plan. So they cannot, in our view, degazette and develop the forest without first having a public inquiry to change the local plan. They have to change the state structure plan. They have to change the national physical plan. So it's not only degazettement of forest reserve is not all they have to do. They have to do an environmental and impact assessment as well. That's mandatory. And already the previous minister said, no way are they ever going to approve an EIA for a development in a degazetted forest reserve. So there are a number of other steps that have to be taken, which could act as impediments for this.
Thank you, Mr. Faizal. Very comprehensive. Yeah, I would like to bring that up because like so many people are listening from different places, like myself from Penang, and if I would like to write in, I want to make sure that my letter does not go into the trash can. But it's good to know that it's enshrined in the law that people who are of interest, regardless of where they are, can send in their objections and letters. I see a hand up by Dr. Andy and also a few questions in the chat group, but I would like to give a question to Shaq before I go on to the audience, if you may permit me. That one question which I'd like to ask Shaq is this. You know, I like what you said about being guardians of the forest, and it's something so unique and precious in today's like highly urbanized world that we have today. And unfortunately, a lot of people still do not appreciate what that really means. People do tend to think that there's a binary of choice between taking care of the nature, preserving them, or going forward in modernization, which means to tear down, to build, and to modernize heavy infrastructure and everything else. Okay, right, the screen is being shared by someone. So not to be distracted, my question is, what is your response to a lot of people who tend to think that the ways of lifestyle of the Orang Asli are not compatible with today's modern society, that it should make way for modernization, like it should, you know, step away or rather upgrade themselves? Then there's a lot of this kind of idea where everyone must move towards that kind of brand of modernization and development, and anything that goes against it should be, you know, put aside or does not have value. So what is your take on this, Shaq?
All right. I think a development that everybody been seeing a lot. I think it's a very tangible and development that people are happy with what been because they like to compare to. But development that we want, the Orasli one actually more holistic than that. It's more into community rather than physicality, rather than materialistic development. Because our development, we need to start our development by acknowledge our right, development by any physics, our understanding about indigenous people. That's development, I think, but what we want to have in Malaysia. Because so far, I never seen any knowledge been in the school about Orang Asli adopting this century, first of all, and people need to know the history of Malaysia from the earliest of prehistory until now, or what is Orang Asli, why they call Orang Asli. The story needs to be told in the school rather than just making Orang Asli into subject of development of the way of life, because we never thought we will need some development to have the same status like others, because we're happy the way we are, and we're happy that we have a forest. I think that's a very very good development for us. Without forest, we believe our identity will be gone, and people need to know about the holistic way of development, because materialistic development is not sustainable at all. I'm sure you heard about sustainability in any advertisement out there in Facebook, even in YouTube, even normal TV, but modern physical housing development. They will say we use what's it called again? What's it called? It's not really. It's not really. Fake. It's not really real. It's not really. Exactly. It's frustrating to know, and first of all, you need to know what sustainable we cannot take more than we need. That's for us is the sustainability, and that's a simple sustainability. You need the meaning you need to know in yourself, because for us living that with the forest as a bright it's a very bright future for us. It's just the way we can sustain for our future, not just for tradition but community. You see, so many countries have their own agenda for New Year, for the environment, for the environment access, for their responsibility with the environment. But why Malaysia doesn't have that plan for their plan to regenerate their environment, like protecting the environment. Every country they have campaign to for the move toward the green life, green. For example, with the case of this degazetment, they instead going toward the green, they destroy the green area. So oxymoron to what so-called development they want us to have. We should go green, and you say sustainable. I think that's really a wrong way to teach your children about the sustainability.
Totally agree. I totally agree with the oxymoron of how you destroy something to build something artificial in replacement of it, which is not near good enough to what the original one is. And I think that's a kind of misplaced priority. Yeah, that's true.